So I advise a lot of startup founders, and often they need advisory in terms of getting their accounting and their finances and their financial strategy in order. So I'm here with Kirsten, and we're going to have a conversation about radically simple accounting and strategic financial advisory for high growth businesses and badass founders, because that's what we're all about here at Startupscom. I'm going to be asking her questions because I think there are a lot of things that founders are not considering in terms of keeping their financial house in order that comes to bite them later on, especially if you're fundraising. I'm going to ask her questions about managing cash flow. How much financing or financial support does a founder need? Because I can tell you, it took me forever. When I got into this game, it took me forever to learn the financial component, but I learned just enough to help me get to the next stage. And so you don't need a full CPA or you don't need a full CFO. And so Kirsten acts as a fractional CFO, which has become a really big thing. So we're going to have this conversation, and probably not the most popular subject, but probably the one that's going to save you the most amount of headache and liability in the future. So Kirsten, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This is a delight.
Okay, so give us a scoop. What is a fractional CFO? What do you do?
A fractional CFO is as if you hired a full-time CFO for your business. Most of us are of the age group that we remember most business structures. I'll just say back in the day, had a full HR team, a full sales team, a full accounting team, a full this and a full that. So I think entrepreneurs who possibly worked at other businesses or saw these larger traditional organizational structures, think I need to hire a full suite of this and a full suite of that and a full suite of that. And I think over the last couple of decades, a lot of really smart, intelligent leaders in our industry have realized that that isn't the best way to start a team. There are reasons why, like, our economy was we all remember this, our economy was completely different. Everyone had expense cards. Like, it was just a different world back then. And that just doesn't exist at all really in our economy, unless you're maybe some like super big WeWork, something like that. But so the best way to start a business. So if you have this idea and you're like, okay, I want to start getting things going, and I have a prototype or an app or a consulting idea or some kind of cool genius thing that is your wonderful gift and magic, the first thing you need to do is focus on getting that out to paying people. And then build your company structure around that as economical as possible. So that whole idea of like a fractional person, like you get a full expertise, like that job position that you're doing, but you get them like a day. You get 5 hours of their time a week. You get a fraction of them, and they are also assisting other colleagues of theirs and yours, but you only get them fractionally. And that is so much better than trying to pay, like, a CFO traditionally in a business would be, easily six figures. If you're at 500,000 revenue, which is still pretty amazing, like if you're a brand new business and you're getting 500,000 in revenue, you're winning it. Like, you're not going to pay 1/5 of that to like an executive, any executive, your CMO, your, whatever your business structure is. So that we exist now is there's a whole bunch of us in all these different areas of a business that an entrepreneur can outsource is just like, I think to me, like the future and the fastest way to actually get things to scale and get things to grow.
Okay. You are touting the benefits of outsourcing your business accounting, right? Because, specializing. Yeah. And so, and that's really great, cost economical, but let's just go right at it.
Okay.
And by the way, this is all unscripted, so I'm just going to start blasting you with questions. I could go out and hire a bookkeeper, and there's plenty of them out there for whatever, 15, 20. I can outsource that. There's overseas. I've been hit with all different types. Not a single week goes by where I'm not approached by some financial bookkeeping. We can do this for you. We can outsource to the Philippines, Vietnam, et cetera, et cetera. You are a fractional CFO. I'm thinking to myself, I'm in a place where I don't need a CFO, even fractional. What would I need a CFO for? So what's the difference between just a bookkeeper, an accountant, and CFO, fractional?
Yeah. So everyone listening, I realize we skipped right over that. CFO stands for Chief Financial Officer. And in this context, when it's an outsourced CFO, that means you're getting someone that's of that level, like C-suite level, executive level, knowledge and expertise with finances. And I'll translate what that means in a minute, which is what you're asking. And this is not a knock on bookkeepers, but generally, and this isn't really like technically supposed to be what it is, but just like the real world, bookkeepers tend to have an education level that has a ceiling, and that ceiling, depending on that person, really varies. And so you may have QuickBooks. I recommend Xero. You may have Xero, and you hire your contracted bookkeeper. You pay them a couple $100 a month. That person at that rate that's doing that activity is going to be maybe 50% to 70% correct on what they're doing, and will not. They're only looking at what's happened in the past and trying to say like, this is something that happened in the past. And then they check out and go to maybe somebody else, or, the rest of their day. So that job description is not fulfilling what a business owner needs to actually scale, to grow a business, to make business decisions that's not going to tank them. I think, what's the statistic about businesses going out of business in the first 5 years? Isn't it like 50-60% of new businesses?
I heard it was like 80%, up to 80%.
I think I'm trying to be nice. So like obviously there's other factors that could lend into that, but I think probably a good amount of that is just bad financial, lack of finances, or bad financial decisions. Because like, the person longest in the game wins, right? Like, if you can keep your business going despite the ups and downs, you're going to win versus your competitor that just can't stay in business because they themselves made bad business decisions. So the name of the game, in my opinion, if you're not trying to just like up and sell a business, is to stay in as long as you can and win that. Yeah. So what we have right now is this is how I describe it. I can't help it. I've talked with my hands. So we got our bookkeeper that's doing this level of work. And again, that level is basically saying like, oh, this thing happened in the past. And they're like, because they don't necessarily have the education on what they're doing, they're not always right. A lot of times they're also don't know, or just don't, for like a personality problem. Ask the owner the important questions to be doing this right. I have a lot of people that come to me that says, I have a bookkeeper that they don't ask me anything, don't tell me anything. I don't really know what they're doing. Like the owner doesn't really know, like they're doing this to make sure they can file taxes, but they don't realize that there's like a disconnect. So the CFO, makes sure that's information either by another staff member, by themselves, whatever, but that information is done as perfectly as possible, takes those numbers and does a variety of things with that. Cash flow, which everyone here I'm listening, I think is definitely going to know all about that. Runway, super important. So cash flow and runway. How much money do you have and how long can you last?
For sure.
Yeah. So there's no way, if you're having a bookkeeper doing like just some like, oh, she went to Starbucks, that doesn't help you realize you can hang out for 3 more months while you're getting something off the ground or signing new clients or whatever it is that you're doing. And there's a lot more that can be done with that. Making sure that the health of it's like a complicated accounting there, making sure the health of the company is good. And that's something you would do like over a period of time. Making sure that you pay all the bills on time, make sure nothing doesn't get paid. And then this is the most important part, making sure you get paid ASAP. So like clients come to me and they say like, oh my gosh, I'm taking 3 months, 6 months to get paid, but I think I can, juggle things. And I'll come in and say, no, we will find a better solution for you to get paid faster. So you can pay your vendors faster, you can pay yourself faster, your business has money faster. Your traditional bookkeeper is not going to think or care as long as you're paying them $300 a month. Okay. So Yeah, that bookkeeper is important, that bookkeeper important as role, but it just needs to be really understood that that is such a small aspect of what you need to do to actually run your business well.
When you go into a company, you don't fire the bookkeeper. You're working in complement with whatever financial systems they have, and you're taking a more proactive, future-driven approach where bookkeeper is in the, getting you up to snuff from the past record keeping. But how does that impact the future? They're not going to tell you. And I totally validate. Obviously, I know what it's like to work with a CFO and the value. We've had bookkeepers, and no, you ask them a question, they're like, we don't, address that. And figuring out how much money do we have coming in? What's the projection? Should we start fundraising right now? Can I take a paycheck type thing? Or say you're in financial distress and say, okay, what do we prioritize? How does that work? And then the CFO can sound the alarm bells if they see something that's up and coming. So it's all about the strategy and really being part of that management suite to help you manage the business with that financial perspective.
Exactly. And I will add, sometimes in our industry, a CFO has a CPA degree, like they actually are a CPA. And you'll see in traditional larger firms, when someone's looking for a CFO, they'll see like CPA preferred, and they'll maybe want them to do some of the work that a CPA can do. I like to separate that out, and I have my CPA partners are their own CPA firms, and they stay in the lane of tax law and continuously being expert at tax law. They don't mess around with anything out like in its managerial accounting, like inside the business accounting. They maybe ask questions and give advice, but the structure generally is like a CPA does taxes and it's over here. I highly recommend working quarterly or twice a year with forecasting ahead of time so that you're not caught by surprise in January, because at that point you can't change anything backwards. But yeah, the bookkeeper and the CFO are like over here. So the CPA is technically like a higher expertise, but it really is in a different area. So, and I will just say, and up to the argument, we'll see if people can comment on this, but I believe CPAs should stay in their lane and CFOs should stay in their lane and not try to do each other's job, because they will err. I've seen it where CPAs err on doing good work this way just to make their CPA work easier for the end of the year. And that's not acceptable. And they're not going to be good at forecasting and business strategy and advising. They're very different things.
Let me reinforce that.
Yes, please.
One complaint that I have. So as a founder, I find that if I have a CFO that is a CPA, they tend to have their foot hovering over the brakes a lot. And so I'll get a lot of pushback, and sometimes I'll get in this battle. As a CEO of a company, your number one job is make sure your company doesn't run out of money. Number two job, make sure your company doesn't run out of money. So I'm constantly looking at, and our CEO does this as well at Startupscom, constantly looking at it. And so, one is I want to have cash flow statements every month. I don't care about the details. I want to know money in, money out, how much we have in the bank, so I can actually just generally project what we're looking at 3 months, 6 months, 1 year down the lane. Sometimes I've had CFOs with that CPA background just shoot a bazooka at a fly and send me way too much information, bog everything down. I just say, I don't care, just boil it down. First thing. Second thing is that sometimes they get so worried about compliance, and we got to do this. And I'm saying, no, right now we're thinking about strategy. I want to be compliant, but I don't have time to think about this right now. Let's figure out how we're going to sit in this room and create revenue, get us to profitability, things like that. And so the right CFO really participates in helping you with that. So these are the things that I've experienced myself. But here's the question. When should a founder consider bringing in a fractional CFO? Like, you can't afford it. Like, if once you get to Series A, you're really going to need a CFO. Like, hire a CFO, you're going to need it. All the compliance and your board becomes very serious at a Series A. It's kind of like
Yes.
everything seed up is just practice, but
Yeah.
when should a founder consider bringing in a fractional CFO?
I think that's a really good question. And I talk a lot about this one topic. I believe, and again, to every nail is a hammer, to every hammer is a nail, right? So take it with a grain of salt. This is what I do. And I've also had 20 years of people coming to me who don't get someone soon enough. And then they come to me in pain and tell me these stories. And I think to myself a lot when I hear some of my really successful colleagues tell these horror stories at the beginning of their business. Gosh, if you just got someone sooner, right? Like that's always what I hear. So I'm saying this because I unfortunately do hear the pain stories all the time. But the second, when you start a business, I think a lot of people either have to or want to make sure to pay themselves first. And I don't recommend that. I recommend, as long as possible, don't pay yourself last, like for as long as possible. Because I think that eats out of a lot of the business. Like if you took all the revenue that your business started with and was making and put it right back into the business and only paid for business bills and things that made the business grow, it will grow much faster than if you're taking out like 75,000, 100,000. That could be paying for other things in the business.
Sure.
So it's tricky. You got to do what you got to do. If you have to, pay yourself to eat, you've got to pay yourself to eat. But if you have a choice and you can make a slight lifestyle adjustment for a year and not pay yourself, then you want to immediately get a CFO that's either doing the bookkeeping or has a team member. Like I have team members that do the bookkeeping. So you'll want to get that as soon as possible because they're going to tell you exactly what you're asking. Do you have money for the next 3 months? Can you hire an employee? Can you do a marketing campaign? Like, let's look at your KPIs with your marketing campaign. Like what I would do, for example, is I wouldn't be like, no, the way that you're saying your CPAs would, but I would say, I'll give you 3 months, see how the ad campaign goes. We'll like analyze its metrics. You got enough money for 3 months, but if it doesn't hit after 3 months, and you think 3 months was like sufficient for it, then like, let's have a new marketing plan or something like that. So that's what like you want someone to do right off the bat. I've had companies come to me more than I would like. It's terrible that are at $1 million that have no or incorrect accounting at $1 million revenue. And I say that because they usually don't even know if they're really at $1 million. They just think they are, but they don't have any books that are correct. And it blows my mind. You do not want to be there, for example.
Yeah. And this is where having that line of sight and having the financial intelligence, all that information at your fingertips as a CEO. I'm going to take another stab at when they should bring in a fractional CFO. As soon as you have money in the bank, and as soon as you know your business model, and if you actually plan to grow and take your business seriously, I believe you should start having conversations. Maybe, book a few hours. Maybe I don't need the full thing, but book a few hours with you every month to talk through and let you ask me the questions, such as, have you considered this? And are you planning for that? Did you know this is coming? Because again, you're absolutely right. Founders, they get in their business starts to roll. They've been doing a really bad job at keeping their financial house in order. And then they get to due diligence or something like that. And they're like, holy crap, I don't know. And it's so painful.
I mean, to be fair, I tell this to everybody that comes to me. You can throw money at any problem.
Sure.
That's the good thing. The bad thing is like you have to throw money at problems. So like you may not have the money, or like why you have to spend money to solve problems when you could have just planned ahead of time. I believe emergencies happen with poor planning. So like it's like one of my biggest mottos, like you don't get emergencies if you planned well. Now, to be fair, none of us can plan perfectly all the time, but if you think with that and you think, okay, let's plan ahead so we don't have emergencies, that is the attitude I think an entrepreneur should have when they first start.
Well, the benefit of having you and being able to, we've had lots of conversations, just being able to talk to someone. Like I have founders come to me all the time, and thankfully I've learned a lot. I'll share a story. One time I got, I had a startup fail, and someone really criticized me, and they said, Ed, you talk a big game, but I've never seen you take a company from $0 to $1 million. This was the feedback that they gave me, right? Just told, yeah. But I said, you know what? They're right. They're right.
Yeah.
I've been really good at getting companies going, and I just couldn't get past that $1 million mark. So I went and I got a job, and I told the same issue with someone who had 7 figures, right? Managing 7 figures of assets and different things like that. And I said, how do you do it? This was the criticism was levied at me. You know what he told me? He said, learn your books. He said, you can manage a company based off of financial data, and that's how you get past $1 million. And boy, did he ever push me. And he was kind of like, you know, training to be a CFO, be CFO minded, at least in savvy, to the point where at least I know enough. And so founders come to me and they say, well, when can I hire this employee and say I get this job? And then I'll say, well, what do your unit economics say? And they say,
Yeah.
what are unit economics, right? And
Yeah.
like these are things that, but I get it, because founders are focusing on their product. Founders have to go out and get that customer, you know, et cetera. They're usually technical. So at least having a conversation, and I hope people just say, hey, Kirsten, can I talk to you? Because you're willing to talk to people, even if they're not ready to hire you, which is what I really appreciate. Thank you so much, you know, type thing. And so having someone as an advisor on your side, watching your financial backside, that to me is invaluable at any stage. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I offer, you know, obviously, like I said, that diagnostic meeting, you know, a 30-minute free consultation. I'll give some feedback and some advice. I don't mind doing that because I'm giving them advice that they have to go implement. I'm not like giving away what my company does. In order to you get the benefit of what my company does, you actually have to like sign up and be part of the software and be in a system and have meetings. So I don't mind having a meeting with someone, hearing something that they may have omitted and the next step they might need to take, and give them that advice. And then I have varying projects, like they can do by hours, they can do 3-month projects, or they could be their businesses at a point that they need the monthly recurring full-time services. But I do believe what you're saying, I hear every single experienced founder say, and very few founders know it from the beginning. I've run into some and I try to ask them, how did they know already? And it's usually like their previous business got them, that they were a partner in, got them into that mode. Maybe a family member educated them. Somehow they were lucky enough to know that that's what they needed to do from the start, but it's really rare. And I haven't found a common thread of like, how did the few people that really do get into this figure that out at the beginning? So definitely use someone like me, get some advice right away. Things like making sure you have the right entity. If you deal with sales tax, you don't want to mess around with sales tax. That's like the common belief is, as far as aggression goes, it goes the worst, the most aggressive is sales tax. And then California is pretty aggressive. And then the IRS is like chill. So like sales tax in California are way more aggressive than the IRS, if that gives you a scale of what to be scared of.
And a lot of founders don't know this, right?
Right.
And so there's stuff that you don't know. So that's having someone like you point that out. Now, here's another situation where people, like, you talk about the legal thing. So the financials impact the legal, and what you do legally impacts the financial. So you also advise, or you can recommend people to legal, in legal direction, recommend them to specific lawyers and everything like that. There's a reason that there's a CFO, a chief financial officer in a company, not the chief legal officer, unless you're dealing with all that sort of thing. You have in-house counsel, but your CFO really should be able to drive and connect you strategically to the right resources to make sure legally you have things taken care of, because you don't want the people who are collecting the beans to sue you and put you in legal problems as well. And there's annual filings and minute books and all that stuff. You handle all that. You don't do it yourself, but at least you provide guidance.
Yeah, exactly. Like there are resources that exist, and I pride myself on finding the best of breed. And I'm always researching and looking at new resources, but I definitely have things that I've discovered and vetted, and I will make sure that the client does those things. Like a good example, it'd be too long to get into, is receipts. I think everyone listening to
Ooh,
this, like, yeah, exactly. Everyone just did that same reaction.
ouch. Yeah.
Yeah. So like there are solutions. Wonderful humans have made apps. Almost everything is either by wonderful other people that I know their expertise in their area, or there's people that made apps. I realized at one point I was a little sad. I realized my business. I'm excited about it because I love technology, but it did dawn on me, my business model being cloud-based, being remote, being all on these apps only exists because other people put more effort and spent more money and hired more amazing programmers and developers and had an amazing idea and made apps. And all I'm doing is coming around and being like, that one, thank you, that one, I'll take that one over there. Oh, you were doing a new one? Okay. Like my latest is Pry, Pry. Everyone can go look that up. It's my latest favorite app. My overall favorite app is Zapier, for example. But
Yeah.
like these, yeah, wonderful humans made these apps, and all I'm going around is telling entrepreneurs and business owners like, hey, let's spend 10% of our life on admin, and we'll just use these few apps. And then
And
the rest of it.
again, that's your
Yeah.
strategic value. You're out there looking at these tools. And so people don't know that this stuff exists. And so you can
Yeah.
guide them. You vetted the tools, etc. All right. So got it, heard it loud and clear. Let's talk about something psychological. Founder
Okay.
fear. Okay. This is what I experience a lot when I'm advising founders. When it comes to finances, they tighten up. Like they don't even look at their bank accounts, or they kind of just, I'm going to stick my head in the sand and maybe it'll disappear, all that stuff. And that's a very dangerous thing, especially because an investor is going to ask you for your financial model, right?
Yes.
When they get to due diligence and say, what's your financial model? And founders like, what do you mean? My TAM is, $30 billion. You don't need a financial model. We're going to make money and, all that stuff. And there's so many assumptions that happen. So, but I find that founders can experience a lot of fear because taxes, different things are scary. Maybe they grew up without financial means, they've struggled and things like that. And then I've seen founders that have like good money and they don't know what to do with it, and then they freak out as well. So there's a fear component. What have you experienced, and what would you say to founders who have this kind of, when it comes to money?
I think it's interesting. And I'm specifically speaking to the American culture.
Okay.
I'm American. I grew up in America. I travel a lot now. So I do notice that different countries and cultures do have different habits that are passed down family to family and business to business. So I want to say that like I've observed that it's really different across the world, but specifically for American founders, I think what you're explaining is a cultural problem that we have that I'd love to see fixed.
Interesting.
So this is a big topic. We could have a whole hour on this topic. So I'll try to be very quick about this. So of course, you get these wonderful people who have these great ideas, starting this new business. They see a need in the market, or they believe there's a need in the market. And they have no schooling with finance because maybe they went to college for writing, or I know we've all gone to college for different things, right? Like, so they didn't have finance in school. As we know by, I think the Rich Dad Poor Dad got out there, like everyone is subject to what they've been taught and what
Absolutely.
right? So that's a big problem too. So you have that. And so personally, they're not handling their finances in any logical or any meticulous way. So that the way someone handles their life personally translates over to the way they handle it in business. So I will say there's like I've thought about this a lot because it's when I work with clients. It is a tiered, like multi-step problem before we even get to the business. And so what they're experiencing and all this reactions that you're having there, that like has a whole foundation below it. I unfortunately have to come in and just like, I can't help them on, the problem they had growing up. I just have to be like, hey, I will be your accountability partner. I will listen to you. I will give you organization. I will tell you what's on fire and what can wait 6 months, which we're talking about a little bit earlier about like their CPA is like, we need to do all these things. And like, some things aren't necessary. It can be done 6 months from now and it's still fully legal, right? So like I try to give someone the viewpoint and like comparison of what they need to focus on and what they need to look at. And it's a slow process. So like, that's how we start. And then I show them a little bit about some financial organization. And I feel like a few light bulbs will go off.
Great.
And then I'll show them a little bit more financial organization. And then they'll start connecting the dots at that point. And at that point, they start to realize it's not rocket science. It's actually a handful of just some good habits and some good ways of looking at things. And then that's really about it. Now, there's a whole bunch more to that that's complicated and expertise and is important in certain areas. Like there's a wonderful colleague of mine that did the financial model for Disney Plus.
Wow.
That's intense, right? Like that's going to be some, right. So that exists. And it's so wonderful that there's finance technology that goes that far for something like that. But we're talking about a couple $1 million here, usually entrepreneurs, like we're not talking about Disney Plus. So at this scale, if once you get a few basics in, it actually can be very simple.
You're providing psychological safety for them to ease into it and then shifting their mindset. Coaching is really what it comes down to. And again, a really great CFO will do that as well. Be like, there, CEO, it's okay. Like we can deal with it. Everything's a gong show behind the scenes anyway. Don't worry about it, type thing. And that's the reason I like referring founders to you, because I know you're going to provide that. They're going to come in kind of, they've had to deal with me. Now I'm shaming them because their, finances aren't in order. They feel very sheepish. And I'm like, don't worry, Kirsten's going to take care of you. She'll make you feel like $1 million. So I appreciate your approach on that. And not every CFO has that capability. And believe me, I've met a lot of CFOs in my day. Now, let me just take the last moment. This has been great, but I want to talk to something that I know you care about. Okay. So I'm going to read this quote here. And this has to do with female founders. It has to do with the income disparity. It's a thing. I just completely acknowledge it all the time. And so it says, on average, women, even business owners in the US, are paid 20% less than men, or around $9,000 less annually. And this is an aggregate. I understand there are different industries.
A couple of years ago.
Yeah. I understand.
It's still a very realistic statistic, even if those numbers are slightly different.
I have anecdotal evidence. I've experienced this myself. And so now industries are different. And this is a culture thing as well. I know in different cultures, women are compensated just as good, even better than men. But, this can add up to 460,000. We have a scenario where women tend to make less, spend an average of 12 fewer years in the workforce, as a result, have a lower lifetime earnings. By increasing knowledge and control on their businesses' finances, women will be better able to make informed decisions. Also, women will have a better grasp of their businesses' worth in the marketplace. Ultimately, this information can help to reduce the gender pay gap. Okay, so let's for some people, this is a sensitive topic, but I think we just got to go right at it. What are your views on this? What's your vision? What's your passion in this area?
That whole paragraph describes the wealth gap. So there's the gender pay gap, which usually talks about perhaps an employee of somebody getting paid. When you're a women businesses owner, you're paying yourself, but it's a little bit different, right? Like you're not necessarily being paid by your boss. So it's important for me for women to run their business really well, charge when they go to a client or they're going to sell their thing, charge what any male counterpart would charge, not get talked down to, which happens a lot too. Like some subconscious thing happens. A woman walks in and the vendor, the client that's considering 3 different people just somehow thinks this woman could be paid less. It's a weird subconscious thing. I don't think very few men would admit to that, but I see it more than anyone would admit to it. The biggest problem with that is that also means that women can't invest their money and have their money grow. So they're limited to what's in their checking account, which isn't great. The retirement isn't growing the way it needs to grow. So when women want to retire, that's a lot less as well. And then of course, we've all known about all the various taxes on women products that then make things just more expensive for us to buy. So like if you looked at my budget versus a male counterpart budget, completely different. And it's just a shame that that happens to be that way. So there's just a lot of gaps that are creating this problem. But I, as a CFO, can only control the earnings aspect of it. But it's really important to me that women have the confidence when they walk in that room. They don't settle for less. If someone tries to lowball them, they're like, nah, I'll find someone else. They just don't have to feel like they're worth less. And then I also really notice women business owners tend to compensate their staff as well as they possibly can. I do see male owners do that as well, but I, for some reasons, just see it happen more with the women-led businesses, because maybe they know about maternity leave, they know about these things that we run into, whereas a guy sometimes maybe, and I know this is very stereotypical, I don't think this is across the board.
Sure.
It just enough of a stereotype that it still happens. So it does seem to be a lovely compensation when they start making their team compensated well, then they can live better. And that's really important to me too. That's like a drop in the pond and then it just spreads.
Yeah, this happens the same way with male investors and female founders. I watch the behavior and my jaw hits the floor. And then, like, it's just this weird attitude, and just how sometimes, like, let's be real, startups is kind of like an old boys club, especially at the money level, and the patronizing, the mansplaining and all this stuff. And it's just, so when I'm talking to female founders, I can sense when they're getting pressure that way. So I want to empower them and say, what do you think? I'll often ask, what does your gut say? Because, my wife is amazing. She always tells me, she says, please don't do business with that person. And then I say, no, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not in business. And then 3 months later, I'm saying, you're right. We're just going to go with your gut instinct. So we've learned, and I think it's really important to have people like you championing this and being, formidable female founders are really important for our ecosystem. So I just want to acknowledge what you're doing. And I want to encourage that everybody, and let everybody know, especially a female founder, you have a particular affinity and you have a vision and mission. But also, I've met with you and you're not some raging, like, get in my grill and, challenge me, type thing. So, but what I also think is that male founders could benefit from having an experience and a conversation with a female CFO, just to get a different perspective and maybe generate a bit more empathy in something that can be as cold and calculated as finances. But I think that you would have an impact on male founders as well.
I've noticed with my clients, not all, but a fair amount, enough that it feels validating at the end of the day.
Yes.
That I see that. Yeah. And it's an anecdote on that. Do you know Sally Krawcheck, the woman that started Ellevest?
No.
But you've heard of Ellevest, right? They market toward investing for women.
Oh, yes. Ellevest.
Yeah. The woman that started that was, she was some high, I feel so embarrassed that I should have had this on a post-it note. She was a very high executive at Charles Schwab, like super high. And I can't remember the exact role she had, but she worked on Wall Street. She has all this wonderful finance experience. She started Ellevest, which is doing really well and huge, and has these horror stories that she's been releasing over the last couple of months about how you can't get more knowledgeable and expertise than her. Not even regarding of the gender, regardless of the gender, she is as top as you can get. And she still got like these horrible mansplaining and weird experiences, even had some from women, which is unfortunately a thing that happens weirdly too.
It is a thing. I've seen it.
So if this like top level expert is getting it, then of course people at our level the women especially at our level are gonna be getting a really hard time. So it's hard out there. And I do really think the more support, the more cheerleading, the more validation that they realize that that is unacceptable behavior, the better. And then I'm hoping less people will work with those investors and maybe they will learn to be, I don't know, kinder.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So let me ask a selfish question. You've been part of Startups.com for a little bit. What's it been like? Give us a review. What's your life been like at Startups.com?
It's been amazing. I want to say like a 180. If I don't know if that's exactly true, but that's like what comes to mind initially. I found it through Girl Boss, a newsletter on Girl Boss. So
Wow.
somebody there posted it at the bottom of one of their newsletters, saying, "Hey, have you heard of this great group?" And I clicked on it, and of course, your website's great, and whatever marketing I saw really led me to be interested to inquire. And then my initial meeting with one of the founders, I'm forgetting her name. She has a wonderful soda company.
So, oh, Catherine.
Yes. Just cemented my belief that these are my people.
Great.
So talking with her, I felt like I was talking with another colleague that I needed to talk to. And then the Slack channel is wonderful. As I continue to make relationships, attend the speed networking, just give a shout out to that. That's been really fun. And the other events there's the women only events, there's all these other different events that you can attend. I really do feel like I'm with my people. So I'm virtual. I'm not rubbing elbows in a WeWork office space cubicle. I don't really get to see and meet new colleagues. So this has been a wonderful place to meet people that are empathetic. Nobody is judgmental. People respond right away on Slack with their suggestions or answers. I notice when I'm looking at other threads, there's always people responding to other people's questions. And a lot has been asked, so you can always search things in the past. So that's been my experience. The events, the Slack, and then of course, all the advisors have been pretty special. I feel very lucky that you have this going on where we can, I don't know if anyone is watching this part of it yet, but you can have these open office hours with Ed and everybody. And you're getting fractional genius.
Wow, that's a great comp. Very affirming. Very affirming. Thank you. Gratifying me here. All right. So let's talk to all the founders. So we're going to end this. You get the last word. What's one piece of advice? Founders are watching this. What could they do next? Maybe, obviously contact you. I recommend everybody contact Kirsten and include the contact information. But what's one piece of actionable advice that could get them started on this real financially healthy journey for their startups?
It's been called financial hygiene by a lot of colleagues for a reason. So while there's 100 things, a list of 100 things I could tell you, I believe the first step to this is mindset. And I used to teach yoga and love yoga. And my teachers taught me every day that you step on the mat is a practice. That's why I call it a yoga practice. You're practicing every day. And so I want to call this financial wellness a practice. And I want owners to think of it like they're not going to be great right off the bat. But like if they haven't done yoga, they're going to step on that mat and not know what to do or how to bend, or probably not bend at all. So that's the same with this too. And I get it. It's unfortunate that our culture has led us to the point that business owners are opening a business without any financial knowledge, and that's where they're starting at. So going from there, the only thing you can do is say, okay, this is a practice. This is something you're doing. Like, it may not be fun in the hour that you're doing it that week, but you'll feel better afterward feeling. So it's just one of those things you want to think of it the same way. It's something you practice every day, you get a little bit better about. It's something that creates wellness. It will eventually create happiness.
Fantastic. I compare that financial hygiene. Okay, let's acknowledge that we have a significant deficit that's led to financial illiteracy.
Yes.
Through our culture that translates to business. But you wouldn't go every day without brushing your teeth, or hopefully, cleaning, like washing your hands and different things. So you can do that with your finances, which healthy habits lead to just a healthy lifestyle. And that's what you're advocating for just start thinking about financial hygiene, and a little bit of financial hygiene every day. Great place to start. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, Kirsten, this has been a pleasure. I know it's not a popular topic, but I think it's time we rip off the Band-Aid and start talking with founders about this. So I just want to say thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.